The earth trembled with each step he took. Every rock he put his foot down on seemed to give way beneath him. A thin layer of ash covered the landscape in an eerie silence. In the distance, he saw smoke billowing from the summit of Vesuvius. He knew that this was not the time for hesitation. The residents of Pompeii had ignored the ominous signs for too long, and now it was up to him to convince them to flee before it's too late. But would they listen? Today we are going to meet a man whose duty it is to predict volcanic eruptions. But how does one do that? Do they have a crystal ball, or are they just really smart? Let's take a closer look at how scientists predict volcanic eruptions. Volcanoes are fascinating natural wonders that can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. These colossal geological formations have the power to shape the Earth and its inhabitants' lives in profound ways. Throughout history, volcanoes have been revered as both a source of creation and destruction. And understanding their behavior is crucial for predicting when they might erupt and protecting those who live nearby. But how do scientists tackle this challenging task of studying these unpredictable forces of nature? First off, let's talk about what happens under the surface. Deep beneath the Earth's crust, there's a lot going on. Magma, which is molten rock, is constantly moving around. Sometimes this magma finds its way to the surface through cracks and breaks in the crust. This is what we call a magma chamber. As the magma gathers in these chambers, the pressure starts to rise. When the pressure inside the chamber becomes greater than the force of the rocks above it, the result is an eruption. Now, not all volcanoes are created equal. Some erupt violently, sending hot gas and ash high into the air, while others have more lava flows. The type of eruption depends on the magma's composition. If it's thick and sticky, it tends to trap gases and build up pressure, leading to explosive eruptions. On the other hand, if the magma is runny, the gases escape more easily, resulting in less explosive eruptions. To understand how magma moves and how volcanoes work, scientists use various tools and techniques. One of the most important is a seismograph. You may have heard of seismographs in the context of earthquakes, but they can also be used to study volcanoes. By monitoring seismic activity, scientists can track the movement of magma as it travels through the pipes or conduits that connect the magma chamber to the surface. They can also use seismographs to detect changes in the volcano's structure, such as the growth of a magma chamber or the collapse of a lava dome. But that's not all. Scientists also monitor other aspects of volcanic activity. They keep a close eye on the gases that escape from the volcano's vents or openings. By analyzing the composition of these gases, they can learn about the magma's temperature, pressure, and viscosity. They also monitor any changes in the shape of the volcano, as well as the temperature of the ground around it. All of this data helps scientists build a comprehensive picture of what's happening beneath the surface. For example, scientists have been closely monitoring Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that destroyed the Roman city of Pompeii in 79 AD. By studying the gases and seismic activity of the volcano, they were able to predict its eruption in 1944. Thanks to these predictions, the Italian government was able to evacuate the surrounding area and save many lives. Now let's talk about another tool in the scientists' arsenal, remote sensing. This involves using satellites and other technologies to collect data about volcanoes from a distance. Satellites can measure changes in a volcano's heat signature, which can indicate an increase in volcanic activity. They can also detect changes in the amount of sulfur dioxide gas in the atmosphere, which is released during volcanic eruptions. Take, for instance, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. In 1991, this volcano erupted in a massive explosion that killed over 800 people. But thanks to satellite monitoring, scientists were able to track the buildup of gases and heat in the months leading up to the eruption. This gave authorities time to prepare and evacuate the surrounding areas, saving countless lives. Of course, even with all these tools and techniques, predicting volcanic eruptions is not an exact science. There are always uncertainties and risks involved. But the good news is that volcanic eruptions are relatively rare events. According to the United States Geological Survey, there are about 15 to 20 active volcanoes in the world at any given time. And most of these eruptions occur in remote areas that are not inhabited by humans. However, there are some volcanoes that pose a significant threat to human populations. For example, Mount Vesuvius, Mount St. Helens in Washington State, and Mount Fuji in Japan. That's why it's so important to continue investing in volcanic research and monitoring. By understanding volcanoes better, we can develop more effective strategies for predicting and mitigating their impact on human lives and property. In addition to these tools, scientists also rely on their own expertise and judgment to assess the risk of volcanic eruptions. After all, there is no single formula or algorithm that can predict when a volcano will erupt. Scientists must consider all of the available data and make decisions based on their experience and knowledge. Take, for instance, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. In the years leading up to the eruption, scientists had been monitoring the volcano closely. They had observed increased seismic activity, ground deformation, and gas emissions. But they did not expect the eruption to be so violent. In fact, just days before the eruption, a magnitude 4.2 earthquake struck the area. Scientists assumed that this meant that an eruption was imminent, but instead of being a precursor to a major eruption, it turned out to be the largest recorded landslide in the history of the United States. The eruption column rose more than 12 kilometers into the air and ejected more than 1.6 billion cubic meters of material. Luckily, the nearby towns had been evacuated and no lives were lost. But the damage was extensive. Hundreds of homes and businesses were destroyed and thousands of people were left homeless. In the aftermath of the eruption, scientists worked tirelessly to understand what had happened and to improve their ability to predict future eruptions. They developed new tools and techniques, and they refined existing ones. They also shared their findings with policymakers and emergency planners so that they could develop better plans for evacuating people from hazardous areas. In the end, it was the combination of advanced tools, sound scientific judgment, and effective communication that helped to save lives and reduce the impact of Mount St. Helens's eruption. Today, thanks to ongoing monitoring efforts, we are better prepared than ever to respond to volcanic eruptions. If you live in an area that is prone to volcanic eruptions, it's important to be aware of the risks and to take steps to protect yourself and your family. Check with your local authorities to find out if you live in a volcanic hazard zone and develop a plan for what to do in case of an eruption. Volcanoes are powerful reminders of the awesome forces that shape our planet. By understanding how volcanoes work and using advanced tools and techniques to monitor their activity, we can better protect ourselves and our communities from their destructive power. So the next time you hear about a volcano that is rumbling to life, remember the scientists who are working tirelessly to keep us safe. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more educational content. Your support helps us to keep bringing you the videos you love. Thanks for watching. When the ground began to tremble beneath his feet, he knew that time was running out. The people of Pompeii had scoffed at his warnings, dismissing them as unfounded fears. But now the tremors were impossible to ignore. With each passing moment, the earth shook more violently. People ran through the streets, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. Shops were abandoned, their wares spilling out into the dusty roads. It was a scene of chaos and panic. He raced through the city, desperately trying to convince people to flee. He urged them to abandon their homes and possessions and seek refuge on the distant hills, but many refused, their fear giving way to anger. They accused him of spreading false alarms and inciting needless panic. Some claimed they'd been through earthquakes before and knew the tremors would pass. Others, stubborn and defiant, refused to abandon their homes and businesses. As he watched the growing crowd, despair filled him. He knew that they wouldn't listen until it was too late. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the valley. The people fell silent, their eyes wide with terror. A thick plume of smoke and ash shot into the air, blotting out the sun. From a distance, the majestic Mount Vesuvius now wore a menacing frown. The people understood the gravity of the situation. It was too late. The earth trembled once more, and this time the tremors were stronger than ever. The road cracked and heaved, swallowing the man whole. With a heavy heart, he realized that their fate was sealed. Their refusal to heed his warnings had condemned them to suffer the consequences of nature's fury. The end had come. The next day, Pompeii was buried under a thick layer of ash and pumice. The city's vibrant colors, bustling markets, and lively streets were all gone, replaced by a silent, desolate landscape. Only the faint outline of buildings remained, like ghosts of the city's former grandeur. The few survivors who had fled to the hills gazed back at Pompeii, their faces etched with sorrow and regret. They had escaped death, but the loss of their city and loved ones left an indelible scar on their souls. The once thriving metropolis was now a shadow of its former self, a haunting reminder of the destructive power of nature and the folly of ignoring its warning.